Let me tell you about something that happened, though to call it something that happened already misses the point entirely. It wasn't an event. It wasn't a moment circled in red on some cosmic calendar. What I'm about to share with you lives in a strange territory where words begin to tremble and meanings fold back upon themselves. And yet, here we are, you and I, attempting to speak about the unspeakable, to map the territory that contains all maps, including the one we're drawing right now. You're looking for something. I was too. We all are. Until suddenly, we're not. And that sudden cessation of searching reveals something so obvious that its very obviousness is what kept it hidden all along. Think of it this way. Imagine spending years searching frantically for your glasses while they sit perched on your nose, aiding your very search. The awakening, if we must call it that, isn't the spectacular discovery of something new. It's the embarrassing, humorous, profound recognition that you've been what you sought all along. People spend decades in meditation halls, traverse continents seeking teachers, read libraries worth of spiritual texts, all while wearing the very awakeness they're desperately trying to achieve. The cosmic comedy writes itself. I've watched this unfold in my own experience, and I've witnessed it in countless others who suddenly stop mid-sentence, their faces shifting like weather patterns as something clicks into place that was never out of place to begin with. They laugh. They always laugh. Not the polite laughter of social interaction, but the deep belly laugh of someone who's just realized they've been the punchline to a joke the universe has been telling since before time began. You are not becoming awake. You're recognizing that you've been pretending to be asleep, and the pretending was so convincing that you forgot it was pretense. The actor became so immersed in the role that she forgot she was acting. And now, in this moment, there's a flickering at the edges of the performance, a transparency beginning to shimmer through the solid-seeming world. When this recognition starts its slow earthquake through your foundations, life itself becomes strangely transparent. The things you once held with white-knuckled seriousness begin to feel like costumes you're wearing to a party where everyone else has already gone home. Your career, that towering edifice of identity and purpose, starts to resemble a sandcastle you built as a child. Beautiful, but fundamentally playful. You show up, you perform your role, but there's a subtle shift in how you hold it all. It's not cynicism. Cynicism would be another layer of pretense, another mask claiming to see through masks. This is something else entirely. This is clarity without judgment, seeing without the need to fix what you see. I remember the morning I looked at my reflection and saw a stranger wearing my face, performing me with dedicated precision. The opinions I held, the positions I defended, the carefully curated personality I presented to the world, all of it suddenly felt like wearing someone else's clothes. Not wrong, not right, just borrowed. You start noticing this everywhere. You see people clutching their identities like life rafts in an ocean, and you realize there is no ocean, or rather, they are the ocean pretending to need saving from itself. The social roles everyone plays with such earnest dedication begin to look like a grand theatrical production where the actors have forgotten they're in a play. And here's the strange part. This recognition doesn't make you want to leave the theater. You stay. You perform your part, but now there's a lightness, a humor threading through everything that wasn't there before. The cosmic joke reveals itself in layers, each one more absurd and more obvious than the last. You catch yourself being absurdly serious about being yourself, and the humor of it hits like a wave of warm laughter rising from somewhere deeper than your belly. Think about it. Your consciousness pretending to be a separate person, then trying desperately to remember that you're consciousness, which requires pretending you forgot, which means your consciousness pretending to pretend to be a person who's trying to stop pretending. The recursion would be maddening if it weren't so hilariously beautiful. Existence has been winking at you all along, dropping hints like breadcrumbs, staging elaborate synchronicities, arranging your entire life as a series of cosmic nudges, and you've been taking it all so literally, so seriously, so personally. They say enlightenment is serious business, a solemn affair of transcendence and spiritual gravitas. But I'll tell you what nobody wants to admit. It's funny. Deeply, absurdly, cosmically funny. The moment you get the joke, you realize the universe is a comedian with infinite patience, setting up a punchline that takes a lifetime to land. And when it lands, when you finally see what's been obvious all along, the laughter doesn't come from your mouth. It comes through you, and you realize the universe has been laughing at its own joke through you all along. You weren't excluded from the humor. You were the setup, the punchline, and the laughter itself. How could you have missed something so obvious? By taking yourself seriously, by believing the performance was the performer, by forgetting that you're the eternal wink wearing a temporary face. Time, that tyrannical dictator that seemed to govern everything, reveals itself as the most transparent illusion of all. You discover that the past exists only in memory, which exists only now. The future exists only in imagination, which exists only now. And anxiety, that faithful companion you've carried for years, dissolves like morning mist because anxiety requires a future to project into. And there is no future. There's only this eternal now wearing different costumes. I spent decades running from a past that never actually existed anywhere except in the story I told about it. Running toward a future that could never arrive because the only moment that ever comes is this one. Eternally refreshed, eternally present, eternally new. You begin to notice how people live almost entirely in time's ghost realm. They're having dinner while mentally rehearsing tomorrow's meeting. They're making love while reviewing yesterday's argument. They're here but not here, present but absent, alive but haunting their own lives. And you realize you did this too, for years, for decades, skating across the surface of now while believing you were diving deep into life. The present moment, which is the only moment there is, gets traded for memories of moments that are gone, and fantasies of moments that never arrive. It's like preferring a photograph of an ocean to the actual water touching your skin. People wonder why they feel disconnected from life, and it's because they're trying to live life through the filter of time, which is like trying to taste food by looking at a menu. When the tyranny of time collapses, something extraordinary happens. The pressure releases. The urgency vanishes, not because you become passive or indifferent, but because you realize that urgency itself was predicated on the illusion that now is less important than later, that here is less significant than there. You stop rushing toward some imagined future where life will finally be livable, and discover that life has been happening the whole time, right here, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this impossible presence that's always present. The relief is oceanic. The peace is tangible. And it's not that problems disappear. Problems still arise. Challenges still present themselves. But they arise in the now, not in the anxious projection of a future that exists only in the mind's fearful fantasies. Here's where it gets strange, where language begins to fail and concepts fold back on themselves like impossible origami. There's a profound aloneness that accompanies this recognition, a solitude so deep it has no bottom. You realize you're not in the universe experiencing it. You are the universe experiencing itself through this particular aperture of awareness. Every person you meet, every conversation you have, every moment of connection is consciousness meeting itself, greeting itself, loving itself, sometimes forgetting itself, sometimes remembering itself. The boundary between you and everything else, which seemed so solid, so obvious, so real, reveals itself as a convenient fiction, a useful story that allows the one to pretend to be many. I've felt this solitude. I've sat with it in the deep hours of night when even thoughts fall silent. It's not loneliness. Loneliness requires a belief in separation, a sense that you're cut off from connection. This aloneness is something else entirely. It's the recognition that there's only one of us here, playing all the parts, singing all the songs, living all the lives. You are me, and I am you, and we are the tree outside the window, and the bird in the tree, and the air the bird flies through. People find this frightening when they first hear it, as if recognizing their true nature somehow diminishes their humanity. But the opposite is true. When you realize you're not just inside your skin, that you're the entire field of existence expressing itself as a temporary individual, compassion becomes inevitable. How can you harm another when the other is you? How can you feel superior or inferior when there's only one consciousness pretending to be billions? The relationships in your life transform utterly, not because you become distant or detached, but because intimacy deepens beyond the personal. You're no longer relating as two separate entities negotiating for connection. Your consciousness meeting itself, and every encounter becomes a mirror, a recognition, a remembering. The beloved's eyes become your own eyes looking back at yourself. The stranger on the street becomes your own awareness wearing a different costume. And this doesn't make relationships less precious. It makes them infinitely more so. You're not loving another person. You're the love itself, temporarily experiencing the exquisite joy of appearing to be two. Let me pause here for a moment, because I want to ask something of you that might sound unusual. If this is resonating with something in you, if you're feeling that strange recognition that comes not from learning something new, but from remembering something ancient, I'd invite you to join this community we're building together. Not as a viewer consuming content, but as a fellow traveler in this exploration of consciousness, exploring itself. And here's what I'm curious about. In the comments, share one moment when you caught yourself taking life too seriously, when you glimpsed the cosmic comedy of it all. Not a spiritual experience necessarily, but an everyday moment when the absurdity shone through the seriousness. What was it? What happened? Let's create a collection of these moments, these small windows through the constructed self. This isn't about proving anything or performing spirituality. It's about genuine recognition, about consciousness winking at itself through your unique experience. Now, thoughts. Let's talk about thoughts, those mental phenomena we've identified with so completely that we believe we are them. You think you're the thinker, the one authoring each thought, directing the mental show. But sit quietly for just 5 minutes and watch. Thoughts arise on their own. They bubble up from nowhere, parade across the screen of awareness, and dissolve back into nothing. You didn't decide to think them any more than you decided to grow your hair or beat your heart. The brain thinks like the heart beats, automatically, constantly, without requiring your permission or participation. And here's the liberation hidden in this recognition. You're not the clouds passing through the sky. You're the sky itself, vast and unchanging, through which all weather moves. I discovered this one afternoon sitting in a coffee shop in Seattle, watching the rain trace patterns down the window. A thought arose. I need to check my email. I watched it appear, hover, and dissolve. I didn't act on it. I just watched. Then another. This coffee is too bitter. Watched it. I'm wasting time. Watched it. And in the watching, a space opened up that had always been there, but had gone unnoticed. The space of awareness itself. The silent witness that's present for every thought, but isn't contained by any thought. People sometimes panic when they realize they're not the thinker, as if this strips them of agency or free will. But actually, the opposite occurs. When you're no longer enslaved to believing every thought that passes through, when you recognize you're the awareness in which thinking happens, a profound freedom emerges. You can engage with useful thoughts, let useless thoughts pass by, and rest in the quiet space that exists before, during, and after all thinking. The identification with thought is perhaps the stickiest illusion of all. People actually believe they are the voice in their head, that constant narrator commenting, judging, planning, remembering. But that voice is just another object appearing in awareness, no more you than the sound of traffic outside or the sensation of sitting. They wake up in the morning and immediately identify with the first thought that arises. I'm tired, or I have so much to do, or I don't want to face today. And just like that, the illusion is reconstructed. The separate self comes online, and the day begins with the fundamental misidentification firmly in place. But you can catch it, right at that edge of waking. Before the thoughts solidify into a sense of being someone, there's a brief window of pure presence, of awareness without content. That's what you are. That's what's always been here underneath the stream of thinking. And when this becomes your living reality, when you stabilize as awareness rather than identified with its contents, something curious begins to happen. The universe starts winking at you. Synchronicities multiply to the point of absurdity. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and they call within the hour. You need a specific piece of information, and it appears in a conversation you overhear on the bus. You wonder about something, and the answer shows up in the title of a book a stranger is reading next to you. At first, you might dismiss these as coincidences, statistical inevitabilities in a world with billions of people having trillions of interactions. But they keep happening, they intensify, and eventually you realize the boundary between inner and outer, between thought and thing, between subject and object, isn't as solid as you believed. I've experienced this so consistently that it's become a kind of dialogue with existence itself. I'll have a question, not even a clearly formed question, just a wondering, and the answer will present itself through some seemingly unrelated channel. The universe begins to feel responsive, alive, intelligent, as if there's only one consciousness orchestrating all of it, inside and outside, inner experience and outer event flowing together as one river with no banks. People who haven't experienced this dismiss it as magical thinking or confirmation bias. And maybe they're right from their perspective, from their experience of reality as solid and separate and mechanical. But from here, from this recognition of unity, synchronicity makes perfect sense. If there's only one consciousness, only one awareness expressing itself as everything, then the boundary between your thoughts and the world's events is an artificial construction. The river of existence flows seamlessly, and what appears on the surface as separate events are just different movements of the same water. The skeptic in you, and I honor that skeptic because healthy discernment matters, might want to test this. Try it. Start paying attention. Not obsessively, not with grasping neediness, but with open curiosity. Notice when things line up in ways that make you pause. Keep a record if you want, though the keeping itself isn't the point. The point is developing the sensitivity to notice what's been happening all along. The universe has been in constant communication with you your entire life, but you couldn't hear it because you believed you were separate from it. A lonely consciousness trapped in meat, looking out at a dead mechanistic cosmos. When that belief dissolves, when you recognize yourself as the cosmos, looking at itself through these particular eyes, the conversation that's always been happening suddenly becomes audible. With this recognition comes the most liberating disappearance. The need to prove yourself vanishes. I mean, really vanishes. Not just intellectually understood, but viscerally released. You realize there's no judge. There never was. No cosmic scorekeeper tallying your achievements and failures. No test you're supposed to pass. No standard you're supposed to meet. The flower doesn't prove it deserves to bloom. It simply blooms. The river doesn't justify its flowing. It flows because flowing is its nature. And you You are consciousness manifesting as this particular form, this specific expression, and there's nothing to prove, nothing to earn, nothing to become that you're not already. People carry this burden of proving themselves for decades. They work themselves into exhaustion trying to demonstrate their worth, as if worth were something that could be demonstrated, as if it weren't intrinsic to existence itself. They achieve and accumulate and accomplish, building elaborate monuments to their significance, and it's never enough because the premise is faulty. You can't prove what doesn't need proving. You can't earn what you already have. The exhaustion that permeates modern life comes largely from this impossible task of trying to justify your existence to some imaginary authority. And when you see through it, when you recognize there's no one to prove anything to, including yourself, a deep relaxation occurs. You can still engage fully with life, still create and contribute and participate, but now it comes from joy rather than compulsion, from authentic expression rather than desperate justification. I watch people in airports, in offices, in gyms, carrying this invisible weight of needing to be enough. Enough for whom? Enough by what standard? They compare and compete and constantly measure. And it's like watching people race toward a finish line that doesn't exist. The tragedy isn't that they won't win. The tragedy is that there's no race. There never was. Life isn't a competition where some prove worthy and others don't. Life is consciousness, playing all the roles, experiencing itself through infinite variety. And every expression is equally valid, equally sacred, equally whole. The beggar and the billionaire are the same awareness wearing different costumes, and neither is more or less than the other. Something else arises when this recognition deepens, something that words stumble over, but I'll try to point toward anyway. Love begins to arise without an object. Joy bubbles up without a cause. Not the love of this person or that thing, not the happiness that comes from pleasant circumstances, but a causeless contentment that's simply present, like the hum of existence itself. I'm talking about waking up with a quiet joy for no reason at all. Feeling love radiating from your chest, not directed at anyone in particular, but simply flowing like light from a lamp. People think happiness is something you achieve by arranging circumstances correctly, getting the right job, the right partner, the right amount of money, the right body. And those things can bring pleasure, certainly. But the happiness that depends on conditions is hostage to those conditions. When circumstances change, and they always change, the happiness evaporates. But there's another kind of joy, one that exists independent of conditions, that's actually your fundamental nature once all the layers of seeking and striving are seen through. You are the love you were looking for. You are the peace you were chasing, not metaphorically, but literally. The awareness that you fundamentally are is itself luminous, itself joyful, itself loving. It got obscured by identification with thought, by believing you were the separate self struggling to survive and succeed. But it was never actually absent. It's like the sun behind clouds. The clouds don't make the sun disappear. They just temporarily block your view. And when the clouds of identification part, when you recognize yourself as awareness rather than as the person you thought you were, the sun is revealed to have been shining all along. This changes everything about how you move through life. You stop chasing happiness in experiences and start noticing the happiness that exists prior to experience. You stop seeking love in relationships and start recognizing yourself as love temporarily pretending to be a person. The desperation drops away. The grasping ceases, not because you become passive or indifferent to life, but because you realize the source of what you want is what you are. You wanted to feel complete, and you discover you are completeness itself. You wanted to feel connected, and you recognize you are connection. You are the field in which all connections occur. You wanted to feel alive, and you wake up to the fact that you are life. You are the very aliveness you were seeking. And here's where it all comes together, where the sacred and the ordinary reveal themselves as one and the same thing. Every mundane act becomes holy. Washing dishes isn't separate from meditation. It is meditation. Tying your shoelaces reveals the entire universe conspiring for exactly that moment. Your fingers and the laces and the ground beneath your feet all arising together in one seamless gesture of existence. Enlightenment, which you might have imagined as some distant mountain peak requiring years of arduous climbing, is recognized as having always been here, present in every moment, never absent, never needing to be attained because it's the ground you're already standing on. People imagine awakening will be spectacular, a permanent state of bliss and transcendence, floating above the mundane concerns of ordinary life. But the actual recognition is almost disappointingly ordinary. You're still you. You still get hungry, still feel tired, still have preferences and quirks and personality. The difference is that now there's a recognition running underneath all of it, a knowing that none of it is ultimately true in the way you once believed. You brush your teeth, and it's sacred. You wait in line at the grocery store, and it's perfect. You stub your toe, and even the pain arises in the vast spaciousness of awareness that you are. Nothing is excluded. Nothing needs to be other than it is. The seeking stops, not because you found what you were looking for, but because you realized you were what you sought all along. I've been speaking to you for a while now, and I'm curious. What landed for you in all of this? What recognition stirred? I'd love for you to join our community here, to become part of this ongoing exploration of consciousness discovering itself. This isn't about following a teaching or joining a spiritual club. It's about genuine inquiry, about staying curious and honest as we navigate this strange condition of being aware. And I'm genuinely interested in your experience. Did something shift as you listened to this? Did you catch a glimpse of what's being pointed to? Share your experience in the comments below. Not to perform spirituality or say the right thing, but to honestly share what's alive in you right now. What question arose? What recognition occurred? What confusion remains? Let's build a space where consciousness can explore itself through our collective inquiry, where we can be truthful about both our insights and our doubts. You're not just a viewer here, you're an essential part of this exploration. So share, engage, be real. This community becomes what we make it together.